In every schoolyard and prison yard in the galaxy, the denizens self-organize into a pecking order. The arrival of a new member precipitates discord until the new member's place in the pecking order is established. You're not going to school dressed like that, young lady.
What's wrong with this dress? You said I should wear light-colored clothing with a non-aggressive pattern. What could be less aggressive than a sleeveless white dress with a maple leaf print?
The white dress is fine, Amina. It's the lack of anything under the white dress that bothers me. It's your first day in a new school, and first impressions matter. Boys will...
Dad! First, I am wearing panties. Second, these multi-species schools are always overheated to accommodate the insects and reptiles. You'd know that if you went to parent-teacher conferences. Third, there aren't any human boys in this school. There weren't any in the last school either, until 2 months before you pulled me from there to trapeze all the way out here.
Amina!
Frank, drop it. The dress is fine. Amina is right. The classroom will be at least 26 degrees Celsius, and excessive undergarments can make it very uncomfortable. Many of the other species will probably be wearing even less. Also, none of the students or staff have seen a human before, and they won't give a rat's ass that she has boobs.
I stare at my mum in shock. I don't think I've ever seen her take my side against Dad before, or quite talk like that. Dad looks pretty shocked too, but at least he knows when he is beaten. Okay, fine, he says, turning back to me. But promise me that you will be flawlessly polite, kind, empathetic, and cheerful, so that nobody will blame you if anybody needs to get hurt.
Mother gives me a hug and says, I know that leaving was painful for you, but as the Taoist prophet Lao Tzu said, new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings.
Stepping back, Mother looks me up and down again, and brushes a strand of dark brown hair from my cheek before saying,
It's time to go. Do you have your presentation and the bug? The presentation chip is here in my right pocket, and the bug is in my left.
As I speak, I pull each of them out to show her. The bug is a grey chip the size of a loonie. It will report both visual and audio information, as well as its own position, but its purpose today is just to let Mum know where I am in my presentation, so she knows when to bring in the food.
Yup, the classroom is hot, but not uniformly so. A heat gradient makes the room generally hotter toward the back right corner, where the entry door is, and coolest in the front left corner, where Instructor Ulrich places his desk. Well, imagine that. Instructor Ulrich is one of the indigenous Gamatrians, and while Gamatrians superficially resemble kangaroos, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't last a day in the heat of the Australian outback. The student desks are arranged in the typical layout for multi-species classrooms. As I stand next to Instructor Ulrich's desk at the front of the room, the endoskeletal herbivores are directly in front of me. They tend to like to stay close to the instructor. Behind them, we've got the endoskeletal carnivores. The most numerous contingent in this group are the smallish lutrinadids. They have a distinct otter vibe going on and eat mostly fish and mollusks. Pro tip, don't be behind them in line for the microwave oven at lunch. Situated among the lutrinadids, but in the choice spot next to the windows that make up the left wall, we have a group of 3 Kagzans. They resemble what you would get if a graphics program did a poor job of overlaying a saber-toothed tiger's visage onto a human frame, making them the most humanoid species in the room, other than me. Rumour is that those showy teeth, which only the males have, are primarily for show, sexual attractors rather like a peacock's tail. According to Mum's information, their leader is the ambassador's son, Malchair. He's not hard to spot. Malchair is a head taller than me, and has the biggest, whitest, most perfectly saber-shaped set of canines you've ever seen, and he knows it. In this school, the pecking order of the students reflects the pecking order of their parents, and just as the Kagzans bullied their way into this system, Malchair has bullied his way to the top of the class pecking order. Sooner or later, he is going to have to be dealt with. But, as Niccolo Machiavelli wrote, people should either be caressed or crushed. If you need to injure someone, do it in such a way that you do not have to fear their vengeance. As in my last school, the back of the room is the domain of the exoskeletons. The endoskeletal-exoskeletal divide is the most rigid cast line in the galaxy. That is to say, it is a resource that I can exploit. The dossiers that Mum compiled about every student in this class indicate, among other things, that the leader of this faction is Chantha, the red and black spider in the centre of the third row from the back. She only stands a little over a metre tall, but if she didn't have her arms and legs tucked in, she could sprawl a good 4 or 5 metres. The left wall of the classroom is the thermal wall. Seats there are reserved for exothermic endoskeletal students. Think iguanas that favour walking on their hind legs because their front legs have become hands. Each seat along the thermal wall has its own heat exchanger to keep its occupant at the optimal temperature for learning. Which raises the question, why does the rest of the room have to be so damn hot? Along the back wall next to the door is a long table against which Instructor Ulrich is leaning as he waits for me to begin my presentation. When Instructor Ulrich invited me to stand in front of the class and introduce myself, he was surprised that I not only had arrived on my first day with a multimedia presentation ready, but that it was in a format compatible with the school's multimedia system. Got news for you, Instructor Ulrich. This ain't humanity's first rodeo. Fun fact, across all the space-faring species in the galaxy, on average, less than 1/100% of the population ever leave the planet they were born on. And yet, many of those that do leave take their underage spawn with them. Enough, anyway, that pretty much every city in the galaxy with a spaceport also has a multi-species school for the benefit of the people working there. But the best such schools, like this one, are always in the planet's capital city because that's where the children of diplomats go. Logically, for every such school, in every such capital, on every such planet, there has to be a first student of any given species. Do all those other first students arrive unprepared? Even Mark Twain commented, "It usually takes me 2 or 3 days to prepare an impromptu speech." Good morning. My name is Amina Fletcher. I am a human, and I was born on Sol 3, which we call Earth. As I speak, the screen spanning the wall behind me shows a star map highlighting our current location, and quite a bit further along the local galactic arm, Sol. My father is Frank, and my mother is Sana. Dad was promoted to a full ambassador this past year, and has been tasked with setting up the new human embassy. We've been on planet about 30 days. We are a long way out from the human economic zone, but my father hopes to lay a groundwork of friendship that will eventually facilitate trade between the Gematra peoples and ourselves. Sure. The reality is that the Gematrians are militarily weak, while the expanding Kazan Empire is strong, and humans have a certain reputation. So the Gematrians approached us with an offer. They would share the stash of Kagzan computing technology that they have acquired if we would do something about the Kagzan threat to their sovereignty. I let my eyes flit briefly toward Malchair. He is wearing less than I am, and I can see sinuous muscles ripple beneath his luscious tan fur as he repositions himself in his chair. Similarly, I'm confident that within this classroom, we can all be friends. On Earth, humans and many other species have learned to coexist in mutually beneficial ways. For example, the video behind me shows me with my friend Moria. The screen shows a younger me with a Mexican red-kneed tarantula crawling up my arm. Moria has a venomous bite and can shoot barbed bristles if threatened, but she would never hurt me, and I would never hurt her because we respect each other. Chantha, who has a shocking resemblance to a scaled-up Moria, is now paying close attention. I linger on her with a friendly, relaxed smile. As the images on the screen change, I ramble on. This next collage of short videos is something my mother put together. Most humans like videos of baby creatures doing silly things. My mother is no exception. Although various animals are shown in these images, they are collectively known as cat videos because, well, I have no idea why. But Mum loves them. My mother is quite the socialite and loves volunteering in the community, so you or your parents will probably see her out and about sharing her cat videos. Yeah, you got gossip? Mum's an excellent listener. Somehow, everything you say finds its way into the Human Embassy's database, to be correlated and analysed to death by her staff and their computers. In just 30 days, she has already set up a cell of informants here at the school, and another among the spouses of officials within the Gematrian government. Don't be surprised if some of your parents come home with a copy of these. I gush cheerfully. I know for a fact that one copy of those videos has already made its way into the Kagzan embassy, where the cutest little Trojan horsey, developed in cooperation with the Gematrians, kicked open a networking backdoor that both human and Gematrian analysts are having a field day with. Dad always says, "If you ever find yourself in a fair fight, you should have prepared better." But getting back to the purpose of this presentation, I will tell you a little about humans and my home planet. Human offspring initially develop internally to our mother's body, so I was born, rather than hatched, a little over 16 Earth years ago, about 17 and a half in Gematria years. The screen behind me is showing a video, taken on Earth about 8 years ago, of my parents and I picking a kind of fruit called a blackberry. On the screen, 2 adult humans and a young girl gingerly reach past thick green vines, with nasty-looking thorns on them, to pick the large, dark aggregate fruits. The purple stains on the humans' faces make it evident that not all the blackberries are making it into the nearly full collection baskets. During my dry runs of this presentation, Dad explained that the herbivores in the room would note that my vertical posture, long sensitive fingers, and tight stereo vision eyes looked like they had evolved to pick blackberries. This will lull them into assuming we, too, are herbivores and not a threat. I make a point of directing a smile at the herbivores in the room, showing off my perfect row of tiny white incisor teeth that are really only good for biting into fruits and soft leaves. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." It continues to shock me that while nearly all sapient species other than hive minds have a concept of lying, only humans have elevated the coordinated and sustained blending of truth, half-truth, omission, and fiction into that wondrous art form we call propaganda. Thousands of years ago, Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception." One of the oddities of Earth is that its axis of rotation is tilted significantly relative to the plane of its orbit around Sol. Across much of the planet, this causes the average temperature at any given location to vary, sometimes wildly, over Earth's year. This causes plants to have a life cycle tied to this yearly rhythm. For example, the blackberries we are picking only ripen near the end of the hot part of the year, so we can't just live on blackberries. But notice the tree they are growing near. That is a maple tree. Its leaves are the inspiration for the pattern on my dress. If you look closely, there is something attached to the tree near its base. That is a tap. At the end of the cold part of the year, the tree will start to produce a sweet sap, which we collect in buckets as it drips from the tap, and then boil down to make maple syrup. Commercial maple syrup production happens using a slightly different species of maple tree than this one, but for our family, this one worked. Fortunately for me, the place where I grew up did not have anywhere near the wild temperature swings that other parts of Earth suffer, even at the same latitude, because we were right on the northeast edge of a deep saltwater lake that covers more than 30% of the entire planet, and all that water moderates the temperature. As I speak, the video changes. It now shows a group of people collecting something from the water along a rocky coastline. There is an alga that grows in the shallows along the edge of this great lake that we harvest and dry into something we call nori. The perfectionist in me is annoyed that I have to call Porphyra abotiae nori, when everyone knows nori is made from Porphyra yezonesis or Porphyra tenera, which only grow in the western Pacific. Dad, however, insists that P. abotiae looks and tastes nearly identical, and that I should just go with it. Mum found out that one of the otter boys has a name that sounds very much like nori, and Dad is a master of manipulating details like that to gain people's trust. Nori is also a very popular and nutritious food source for humans. We sometimes eat it alone, but typically press it into sheets that we can wrap around other foods. While I talk about maple syrup and nori, I see my mother slip into the back and quietly place a tray of food on the long table. She then gives me a quick smile and slips back out again, while I am careful to not alter my monologue or look directly at her. A quick glance around the room confirms that nobody noticed. Getting in and out of protected spaces without being observed is another of my mum's specialties. I pause the video and again smile, showing only my incisors. On Earth, organisms develop the sense of taste 1 billion years before they develop receptors for vision and sound. So to better appreciate my planet, I have brought in some samples of our food for each of you to try. Then I focus specifically on the Kagzans, who look bored with the presentation so far, and Lucianidids, who started bored but perked up at the coastline video. Now, a group of you might not be into the whole berries and tree sap and algae thing. Don't worry, I've got something for you too. Look at the video here. As I point at the screen, I start playing the video again, and the camera starts moving away from the people in the water. Way up the shoreline from where people are picking the algae, that enormous grey-brown hulk moving around in the distance is a grizzly bear. It is hunting for a migratory fish called salmon. Grizzlies can be more than 7 times as heavy as I am, and a big salmon can be almost half my weight. I point out the grizzly because they are omnivores and will also eat blackberries. So when we pick blackberries, we have to keep our eyes open. As you know, omnivores are notoriously unpredictable. They will be placidly eating blackberries one moment and decide meat is on the menu in the next. In fact, because of the annual life cycle of the plants, all of Earth's animals have to be flexible, and a large number of species are omnivores. This gets the Kagzans interested. As carnivores, they understand the unpredictability of omnivores. But it's not actually the grizzly bear I want to draw your attention to. It's the salmon. I brought some in for you to try. Now, it would be hard to transport fresh fish across hundreds of light years, so I have salmon that has been salted and dried by smoking it over a fire made from the wood of a maple tree. Instructor Ulrich looks puzzled as I turned off the video, collect my presentation chip, and start walking toward him, and visibly startles as he realizes a substantial plate of food is sitting on the table right behind him. It is glorious. I just smile my best, of course there is smile, as his brain tries to catch up with reality. I have to reach around him to pick up the tray because he is too confused to move out of the way. I encourage him to take a blackberry before I go back to the front of the classroom. The tray has 4 sections: blackberries, little sample cups of maple syrup, nori, and smoked salmon. As I walk around, I encourage you to pick one item that looks interesting to you. Then I will place the rest of the tray on the back table to allow you to try the other items later. I start with the herbivores up front, most of whom took a blackberry and generally seemed to like it. Then I move down the thermal wall. Dad was right that the iguana folk love nori. They fold their dewlaps when they are happy. Surprisingly, a few of them went after the smoked salmon and seemed pretty pleased with that too. That's good to know. I'll report to Mum that some of the lizards may be a little more open-minded than we think. At the back of the room, I move over to the exoskeleton crowd and, starting in the back row, work my way forward. My roundabout path through the room is chosen so that I end with the Kagzans and Malcher. His authority in the class is held through fear, and I want him to see that I can undermine him with kindness and food. Especially food. Patience, Malcher. The fear comes later. Sun Tzu wrote, "If your opponent is of choleric temper, irritate him." Most of the insect-like students in the back 2 rows go for either the syrup or the nori, and again, while some are ambivalent, most seem to like it. Except one. I think her name is Kithkith? Kif in the far back row is reacting rather more jubilantly than expected. I give her a concerned look before continuing my rounds. When I get to Chamfer, she takes some smoked salmon and expresses her delight. Then she takes another one because, well, it's Chamfer, and I'm not going to say no to a giant tarantula. Turning one eye toward the back, she says, "I think Kif could turn into a maple syrup junkie. Please, oh please, let me give her another one." Now, like a tarantula, Chamfer has 8 appendages, but in her species only the center 4 offer mobility. The front pair and the back pair act as hands. When I agree, she grabs a cup of syrup with her front hand that isn't holding her second piece of smoked salmon, passes it to a backhand, and then reaches way back 4 rows to hand the cup to an eager Kif. Chamfer and I both giggle as Kif absolutely wigs out. I think I have found a kindred spirit, though I'll have to remember just how far she can reach when she wants to. Suddenly, Chamford grabs my wrist. Not the wrist holding the tray, fortunately, and pulls me closer, whispering, "I think Malcher has taken a dislike to you. Be careful. He is a bully, and his kind are predators. He will stalk you and try to catch you where there are no witnesses." I open my eyes wide and raise my eyebrows. "Oh, I hope so," I whisper back. "When he follows, I will lead. He picks the time, but I pick the place." Then I smile, a broader smile that reveals my canines. Sure, they're ridiculously tiny, but no true herbivore would have them at all. Chandra startles, looking first at the now blank screen, and then back at me. "You did say a large number of Earth species are omnivores." Then, giggling again, she says, "You'll have to let me know how it goes." Chandra's species are ambush hunters. I knew she'd understand. Working through the otter-like Lutrinideds, I finally get to the Kagzans. The two subordinate Kagzans, whose names I've already forgotten, each take a bite of smoked salmon with more than a little pleasure, which only angers Malcher more. He has watched his standing in the room fade as I walked around it, and now feels his honor is under attack. He takes a bit of salmon to avoid losing face, and he can smell it, but then tries really hard not to enjoy it. But he's still a cat, and that broad, raspy tongue flicking across his upper lip and the bases of those fabulous canines doesn't lie. Oh, my sexy cat boy. If your honor is as long and hard as those canines, you bet I'll let you catch me. I'll turn your color vision into 50 shades of grey and record some compromat that'll have your parents doing anything we ask to keep it hushed. I let my eyes do a lingering detailed scan down his body, and notice that he is wearing what can only be described as a fanny pack. Turning to Nori, the Trinidad in the window desk, immediately behind Malcher, I say in my most upbeat tone, "Would you like another sample?" Then I held the tray toward him with my right hand, such that the tray blocked Malcher's view of my left hand, slipping the bug from my pocket into his fanny pack. Good luck stalking me with a tracker on you. That greedy little shit Nori reached out with both hands and grabbed a piece of salmon and a slice of nori. First he nibbled each separately and then, in a burst of inspiration, wrapped the nori around the salmon. Oh, great. Judging by the actions of his tail, it looks like I just created another food junkie. Well, I can use this. Hey, Nori, will you please do me a favor? Carry this tray to the back table for me and then find yourself another desk. Nori looked at me like he was affronted at being asked to move, and then looked back at the tray. Nodding affirmatively, he lifted the tray from my hands and headed, albeit slowly, in the general direction of the table at the back. I'm confident the tray will be emptier when it finally gets there. I then reconfigure the desk and chair for human anatomy and sit down. Chandra is 2 rows behind me and toward the center, while Malcher is directly in front of me, where it is far easier for me to watch him than vice versa. Daddy always says, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, eh?" Malcher turns in his chair to face me and seems about to say something when we lock eyes. In his eyes, I see the fires of pure rage. Holding his gaze, I smile a practiced gentle smile and suddenly reach out with a single piece of salmon I snared from the tray, before Nori walked off with it. We stay like that for several seconds before he lets me push the salmon into his mouth. Chewing the salmon, he turns his head, first down, and then slightly to the right. New pecking order established.